A future possible working relationship between AEW and WWE, and Sammy Guevara kind of goes off the rails again, proving he's one of the most controversial figures in wrestling of the last 12 months. This is the Rantin Review. What's going on, you sexy bitches? Welcome back to the Rantin Review. We're talking today about some AEW news along with a little bit of WWE news, which is a little bit interesting that that's even a topic now. Some crazy things were said by a person who says a lot of crazy things often. But before we get to that, of course, this being YouTube, you guys know the drill. Help out with the channel. We're picking up new people. I see every week you guys in the comments going, I didn't know you were back on YouTube. Yes, I am. So in order to help other people who used to watch my channel rediscover it again, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and probably more importantly, share it on social media wherever you talk about wrestling. Therefore, other people who used to watch me can find me again now that I'm back on the tubes. On to what's going on today in the wrestling world, however. There was a lot that happened last week on AEW Dynamite. Their ratings have kind of settled back down into the 700 to 800,000 range after having a lot of wild swings earlier in the year. We'll see how this goes on forward, leading into Revolution and what comes out of Revolution. But one thing I think has gathered a lot of people's attention is that Kenny Omega went to Crazy Eyes Kenny Omega, and anytime Kenny Omega does the Crazy Eyes Kenny Omega with that crazy voice of his, oh yeah? Well, guess what? We're gonna have a barbed wire exploding death match! Anytime you see Kenny Omega doing crap like that, you know his crazy mind is working on something that's probably even bigger than the thing that he just talked about. But in addition to the fact that he has now announced that his match with Jon Moxley at Revolution is now just up through the roof, going to be an exploding barbed wire death match. I will tell you this, as a person who was there live to see their non-sanctioned match at the Baltimore Arena back at, I think it was Full Gear in 2019, I am definitely looking forward to this exploding barbed wire death match. Even though Tony Schiavone said he didn't like these kind of matches, but apparently he's going to play ball and maybe he'll wind up liking it. Again, Tony Schiavone rediscovering wrestling in the 2020s is one of the best things about AEW. But despite all of this craziness that he's saying kayfabe, there is something he said this past week that was also kind of crazy, and the fact that he did see in the future that there was a possibility of AEW working with WWE, and he particularly talked about Triple H. So why is it important that he said Triple H? I think we all kind of read between the lines with stuff, because even as much as some people in the business like to tell the fans that the fans don't know what they're talking about, fans are not stupid. They can see things, they can read, they watch interviews, and this is part of being human. You can kind of tell personality types, and you can hear little things that indicate what somebody kind of thinking about things, even if they're not saying it. Triple H in particular is one of these people in WWE. It's a lot of reason why a lot of people are hoping that he takes over the company someday, which is a possibility when and if Vince ever retired. Well, Vince will eventually have to. He's mortal. He will pass away someday. I mean, but hopefully it won't come to that extreme for him to step down from WWE. But eventually, and probably not too far in a too far distant future, Vince McMahon will have to step down, and Triple H could be the guy running the company at that point in time, and we're basing a lot of this off of what we've seen with NXT. Triple H famously went over to go get guys like Kenta and Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura and brought them in, a lot of the female Japanese wrestlers, and brought them into NXT and gave them that WWE shine and helped make them big stars in NXT. Only for almost all of them not to succeed on the main roster. And as all of us who are fans of NXT and fans of these men and women before they got to the WWE system, we all know these people are extremely talented, and we've enjoyed a lot of their work immensely before. And back in the day, it was always like, man, I can't wait to see them go to WWE where they can get that WWE shine. Now, over the last 6 or 7 years, you notice a lot less people are saying stuff like that, because that used to be what was said. They can't wait to see what they do once they get up to WWE. Now it's like, well, we've seen, I don't know, probably 10, 12 dozen times these people go up to WWE's main roster, and WWE's main roster completely mishandle 90% of them. Very few exceptions. AJ Styles, Kevin Owens would be exceptions, but most of the time, it doesn't work out too well. And Triple H, in particular, even though he's not going to admit that he's frustrated with some of the booking decisions of the talent that he groomed for years in NXT and then sent up to the main roster only for them to flounder or to be sent back, in the case of Keith Lee recently, he probably is not going to say anything. But when you look at all those tag teams that he built up and then he sent them up to the main roster and almost none of them exist anymore. In fact, one of the best ones went to the rival company because they were so frustrated with how terrible the booking in WWE's main roster was. I'm looking at UFTR. I do think that Triple H probably would be more open to a working relationship with other companies. And he already showed that. He's done it in the UK with working with some of the UK indies. And I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that he was one of the influential people in getting a lot of those British indies onto the WWE network. Now, where this could be interesting with Omega and Triple H, because I would assume that they have talked before. There has been a lot of discussion about all the negotiations for years when Kenny Omega was in New Japan about WWE trying to get him to come to WWE, and being the fact that, you know, Kenny Omega's proven himself as a talent in the ring. He is a vice president with AEW, so him, the Bucks, Cody, they could make that kind of deal with the game if it ever came around to it. I mean, we talked about the forbidden door recently with New Japan and AEW, but the probably bigger forbidden door, or I wouldn't even call it a forbidden door, I think most of us look at it as the impossible door, would be WWE teaming up with any of these other major league companies that they just couldn't dominate over. And I think that's part of the reason why you don't see it, and you have seen them they kind of went in and kind of took the UK scene, which basically the UK scene gave itself up. But they could do that with them because those companies, first off, didn't consider themselves to be anything special and on par with WWE or even a competitor, and they were just happy to get WWE to pay attention to them, and that's how UK scene wound up to where it is now. But the other thing about that is that you can't do that with Impact, you can't do that with AEW, you can't do that with New Japan, you can't do that with some of these other companies, and WWE doesn't play well if they can't say, okay, well, we're going to tell you what to do. But a working agreement, Triple H with the way he looks at wrestling. And another thing a lot of people tend to either not know or forget is that Triple H, if you've listened to a lot of his interviews, he grew up watching a lot of Crockett and Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen and stuff. And you see that reflected in NXT. And one of the things Crockett used to do was work with a bunch of different companies. So I do think that there is a potential at some time in the future. And the fact that Kenny Omega is saying this, it might mean it's more of a possibility than not, but nothing's going to happen in the next couple of years. But I would look for it when Vince steps down. Triple H wants to do business. There's a lot of money with working with a lot of these companies. I do think in the future that we might see an entirely different policy from WWE. Plus, another thing, Triple H might not have any choice, especially if he wants to get into two of the biggest markets in the world outside of the United States for wrestling, which would be Mexico and Japan, because right now WWE doesn't really have strong relationships with major wrestling companies in those territories. You know, AEW, New Japan, CMLL, AAA, Impact, they're all kind of working together. And the other companies that are in those countries are on, they're on a second tier, and those are the only companies that WWE can really work with. Well, with the exception of maybe Noah, but even Noah kind of rejected them. So unless they get a partnership with Noah, I don't see WWE being able to get a stronghold in Japan or in Mexico, which there pretty much isn't much of an alternative outside of CMLL and AAA as far as a Major League Wrestling company in south of the border. So in order for them to tap into those markets and get even more out of them, it might be strategic and beneficial for WWE to join those partnerships, and then everybody kind of co-work and co-mingle together, and you just have a great working relationship. In a lot of ways, we're kind of going back to the territory system, but I wouldn't consider the territory system anymore, just as the wrestling community finally waking up like the rest of the communities, like the movie community did with Fox and Marvel and Sony all working together on the Disney stuff with Marvel. So we may be seeing some of that happening here in the wrestling community, where all of these companies just kind of go, you know what, we can make a lot of money if we just strategically work with each other, but we all have our own thing and our own brands and our own fan bases, but we can cross-pollinate and grow the fan bases and make a lot more money that way. Another thing that came up with AEW this week that was a little nutty is these rumors about Sammy Guevara, who apparently was going to be booked for Impact tapings this week, and decided that he just didn't want to do it. This is reported by Dave Meltzer, so again, take it with a grain of salt, as you should any wrestling rumor, and not take it as true. And even Sammy Guevara on his blog is kind of tongue-in-cheek referred to the fact that some of these rumors aren't 100% true, but the rumor is currently that he was supposed to be booked for some sort of angle on Impact Wrestling's recent tapings. He was going to compete in a couple matches. There was even talk of ideas about pitching him to be the X Division champion and then bring it to AEW and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Sammy apparently seemed to not really dig the way the booking was handled. And then apparently Don Callis and Tony Khan and Chris Jericho, they had to go back and forth over what was going on with Sammy, and to the point where it's reported that Jericho told Sammy just to leave and not stay there at the Impact taping. This could be potentially damaging to the partnership, but I think it's probably more damaging to the reputation, the already very tarnished reputation of Sammy Guevara, who is becoming a very controversial figure in the world of wrestling. It's almost like we're waiting to see the wheels fall off of this guy. I mean, with the Matt Hardy stuff, with the Sasha Banks comments last year, and now with this stuff, he might be getting a reputation for himself. Sammy's a very young guy, and he's very hot-headed, so it's understandable, and hopefully as time goes on, some maturity will kind of keep him out of this stuff, but this is what happens. He's, like I said, he's a young guy. You're going to have this kind of stuff. He's making a name for himself. It's a fine line to walk, though, where you become somebody that's controversial and then somebody that people don't want to work with. Storyline-wise, it made sense. Sammy left the Inner Circle and he left AEW Dynamite saying he needed to go away for a while, so it would have made sense for him to show up on Impact. But maybe there's another place he could go. Maybe he could go to NJPW Strong and work in some of the juniors, the hot juniors division that's going on in New Japan right now, which I think probably be a better fit for him, actually, to be quite honest. So I don't know where this is all going and how much of this is shoot and how much of this is work, because these guys are becoming very, very good at blurring the lines between reality and fiction, which is the best thing about wrestling. Wrestling is always at its best when the lines between reality and fiction are blurred and the fans don't know exactly what is kayfabe and what is shoot. That's always when wrestling has been awesome. So I'm digging this kind of stuff going on right now with the AEW Impact New Japan partnership and a potential future of a WWE getting involved in this. The only thing I would say about that is if that does happen in the future, guys, for all the other companies, and there's smart people working at them now with Don Callis and Tony Khan and Gato and all the other people in New Japan, but keep your eyes open because you can't trust WWE. They screwed over the territories before. Learn from that history and how they screwed over the territories when they worked with them before, and just watch your ass and keep hold of what's yours, because you guys worked a long time to build up this stuff. Don't just give it up. Don't be like the UK scene and then build up a scene and then give it over to the McMahons. Build up your scene. If they want to work a partnership, cool, but make sure you keep sovereignty over your stars and your talent and your intellectual property. But those guys don't obviously need me to give them advice on that. This is really just information and something to think about for some of you guys out there in the YouTube land. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about these subjects. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Also, check out that free 30-day trial for Amazon Prime down in the description box. You get free shipping on stuff. You get free stuff. You get big, heavy discounts on things. If you've never used Amazon Prime, pretty good time to use it and go pick up some wrestling DVDs or whatever you guys want to do. You can check out some of my other videos and subscribe to my page on whichever side of the screen this is on. And definitely share this video on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you talk about sports, entertainment, and all elite wrestling. I will see you guys for more news, rumors, and commentary right here on The Rant and Review. Have a good day.